Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I am Darren, a professional scuba instructor in South Florida, and today we are talking about jet fins. So I have been diving with jet fins for probably 20 years, and they were my go-to fin forever. I've had these pair forever. They are worn out. They're a workhorse. They're still in excellent condition. And when the RK3s came along, I tried these out and I fell in love with them. I found them to be lightweight. I thought they were just going to be a travel fin, but they actually became my everyday diving fin in warm and cooler water. And recently, Scubapro came out with some of these new fancy colors. So I picked up a pair and I tried them out, and this is a review of how they compare. When I evaluate scuba fins, I look at them on a few different dimensions. The first is how comfortable are they on my foot? How comfortable are they to use when you're diving? The next is their propulsion. How well do they move me through the water? What kind of performance characteristics do they have? The third factor that I look at is their buoyancy characteristics. Are they light? Are they heavy? Do they float? Do they sink? And what does that do to your trim position when you're diving? And then finally, I look at the style. The first rule of scuba diving is to look good while you're diving. And so the marketing departments at the scuba companies are always coming up with new designs to make them more stylish, more interesting to divers. And so that's obviously going to be a factor. So let's put these new Scubapro Jet Fins through the paces and see how they rank. One of the things that I just didn't like so much about the old Scubapros, and these are probably 20 years old, was this part right here is very stiff. There's very little flexibility to it. And I have a high part of my foot, I think it's called the instep. And so it would push against there. And you can see here, there's not much flexibility. This is a 5-pound weight. So when the RK3s came along, this foot pocket is really soft. This is just really pliable and conforms to your feet. You can see how much that gives there with the 5-pound weight that I'm not even pushing down on. So that really conforms comfortably to your foot. Then a buddy of mine got some of these new jet fins, and they're much softer. Ooh, look at that. So now we've got that same sort of flexibility that allows them to be more comfortable and mold around my foot. So I thought, let's give these a try. The originals were made in USA. Now, like most things, not so much. Made in Taiwan. So from a comfort perspective now, around the foot pocket, they're actually quite nice. And as I dove with them, I found them to be pretty comfortable. Now let's talk about the spring strap. When the jet fins first came out in the 60s with an open heel, they had a rubber adjustable heel strap that I never liked at all. It was one of the first upgrades I made to replace the rubber with these springs. And spring straps were a real innovation, it seemed like at the time. They made them very easy to put on and take off, don and doff, as they say. And it really changed the game. These are indestructible, they last forever, and they're so easy to use. The new jet fins come standard with these spring straps like that. They've got a cloth cover on them. This cloth cover is unique to Scubapro and just a few other fins. Most manufacturers have put something with a little bit more structure, like these dive rights here. So that's comfortable around the heel. Here's a pair of aqua lungs. It also have a loop to grab it by. And here's the RK3s, which have a loop and a really comfortable rubber. When diving with these, this stays in position nicely, but I just don't find it nearly as comfortable as the rubber padded, wider protection that the other fins have. After a while, you actually just start to feel it against my heel back in here. I think that's a much better design, and I don't even feel it while I'm diving. One thing I noticed was that these seem to require more effort to put over my heels when I put them on and take them off versus the RK3s. So let's see if I can measure that. So I was actually going to use this scale that I use for measuring fish to see how much force it took to pull this over my heel. And in so doing, it actually bent the hook and broke the scale. So it required way more force than 25 pounds to try to pull this over my heel. Well, let me see if I can find another way of measuring this. All right, so plan B, let's try this scale, which is what you can use to measure suitcases. So I've got the scale loop hooked around the heel strap, and let's see what it takes. Looks like 12 pounds. 12 pounds or so is what it took to pull it over my heel, to take it off, getting up to about 10, 12. So about 12 pounds of force required to get that off. Now we'll do the same test with the jet fins. 29. Took about 29 pounds to get that over. I'll repeat that again, and to take it off, it's going to take 30, which is why I broke the other scale, because that had a max of 25. One additional detail on the ability to take these off and on is at the end of a dive, when you've got this on and you're trying to remove it and hanging on the ladder, these were way harder to take off. And I think it's largely because they don't have any drain holes, and so they make a really tight suction on your feet. That might be an advantage, or it might be a disadvantage to you. I find it a huge disadvantage to really have to struggle to pull these off of my feet because they're stuck so hard at the ladder. Speaking of drain holes, let's talk about drain holes. Scubapro has been making these jet fins without any kind of drainage holes, I think, since the beginning of time. And that's unlike other manufacturers. The RK3s have huge, beautiful drain holes, so the water can easily drain out and they don't form a suction. Dive right, drain holes. Even these aqua lungs, big old slot to drain. You lose a finger in there. And that lets the water drain out as you climb up the ladder. When you're climbing up a ladder and your fin is full of water, if you have holes, they drain out and you're not carrying the weight of the water in there. The jet fins do not drain, so they are just full of water. And you have to dump it out. Let's talk about performance. There is a reason these things have been around for over 50 years. They are wonderful underwater. They will move you through with a bit of effort, but it's rewarded by the propulsion in the opposite direction. They have a really nice stiff outer edge like this. They kind of invented these vents like that channel the water most efficiently, or so they say, for back kicking, for side kicking, frog kicking. Even a flutter kick works well with these. If you have to chase a fish or you have to chase after a student who is going somewhere they shouldn't go, these still work really well. They're great for fighting currents, and they just give you so much power and control. I wanted to somewhat directly compare the propulsion of the jet fins to the RK3s. So I put one on each foot and I started to frog kick along a straight line. I had run that orange line from my reel along the sand so that I could have a reference point. I was really trying to apply the same amount of force and kick evenly, but I could feel myself being pulled in one direction with each kick. So I swam the straight line again, but this time I covered my eyes so that I wouldn't be influenced by what I was looking at. And I could not believe how far from the center the jet fin had pushed me. In other words, the jet fin had provided significantly more forward propulsion than the RK3. What about the buoyancy characteristics, you might be asking? A pair of XL jet fins weighs in at just under 7 pounds, 6 pounds 15 ounces, compared to the RK3s, which are a size large, weighing in at 5 pounds 4 ounces. So if that's a consideration for your suitcase when traveling, the RK3s are going to be a better choice. The real difference in buoyancy characteristics you can tell in the water. So here in freshwater, you can see that the RK3's float comes to rest just at the surface here in fresh water, compared to the jet fins, which will probably sink like a log. Sink like a stone, I guess I should say. Bye-bye. Is it good or bad that the jet fins are heavier and will sink in fresh or salt water? Well, it depends on what you want your fins to do. If you have naturally floaty feet and tend to have a position in the water that's more like this, the jet fins are great. They'll naturally bring you back down like this. If you have naturally heavy feet or characteristics of your exposure protection that makes you more like this, and they're going to drag you down. And that's where the apexes are going to pull you up a little bit more like this. So it really depends. Do you want a heavier fin out here or in here if you're frog kicking? If so, jet fins are going to pull you like this. Apexes are going to pull you a little bit more like this. In practice, with experience, you can compensate for either one of them and have a really good trim position. But with the jet fins, you do get an extra pound or two of negative buoyancy, which could help you not have to wear that pound of lead in your weight belt or in your BCD pocket. What about style? I think it's hard to argue that these are not some really good looking fins. I love the camo pattern. I really like how they look. I mean, these are the fins that, as I was growing up in the 70s, that's what divers were wearing. So I kind of have in my mind that this is what a cool scuba fin should look like, with the vents, the holes, the rounded edge. And the one enhancement that they've made to these is they've added a hole to the newer ones, so you can clip that on a carabiner if you're doing a shore dive and just have it right there. So these, I think, are a really good looking fin. That's obviously a personal taste. These are a very practical looking fin. I like the yellow color because it makes me visible to students underwater, especially if we don't have good conditions. These are still really noticeable underwater, so I haven't lost any students yet, and think that these are just some good looking fins. Size-wise, they're about the same length. The jet fins are about 22 inches. The RK3s are just a little bit shorter, about an inch shorter, and they're about the same width. Jet fins might be just a hair wider. So what's the verdict? Well, let's run down our list of important factors. For comfort on the foot pocket, I think the RK3s still have a slight lead here. But the jet fins have definitely gotten better. But the spring strap is definitely an advantage for the RK3. I just think that the spring straps on the jet fins are not nearly as comfortable, and they require a lot more force to put on and take off. For propulsion and performance, the jet fin definitely gets the win here. You can really go fast, control your position better in these than probably any other fin, which is why so many people love them. For buoyancy, it's really a draw. It depends on what you want. Do you want a heavier fin? Do you want a lighter fin? If you want a heavier fin, then the jet fin's your choice. If you want a lighter fin, the RK3 is your choice. And for style, I think I'm going to give the win to the new jet fin, thanks to its very striking camo colors. So there you go. That's my opinion of the Scubapro Jet Fins. It's very clear why people love these and have loved them for many, many years. They're a great fin. I'll be using them with my dry suit as the water gets a little bit colder here in South Florida. And the only thing I may modify is drilling a couple of holes so that they'll drain and not have as much suction on my feet when I'm trying to take them off. But they're great fins. Scubapro did not pay me or give me these fins for free. I bought them with my own money. But if they would like to give me some equipment, I'm happy to take it. If you like this video and videos like it, make sure you subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. And I'll see you next time.